to become a district attorney, worked there approximately 16 years, tried every type of case you can imagine, but I was really a murder prosecutor. That's what I do best. But also at that time tried the longest case in Georgia's history, which is the Atlanta Public Schools case, a RICO case. That's how I became acquainted with John Floyd, because he taught me RICO inside and out, and taught me how you can use that to bring criminals to justice, which I've done throughout my career successfully. Worked there, then decided to leave to run for office, ran for judge, came up 49%, I believe is the percentage of the vote that I won. Actually went to a Republican strategist. He told me, because I went to a runoff, Republicans will not vote for you. And I said, why? I've had a history of representing this state. I've done so successfully. I'm known as a prosecutor. He said, you're Black and female. I said, I don't believe that to be true. I don't think that's the state of the nation. Who knew? He was right and I was wrong. I lost that election, but that was God's plan, because after that, I had the honor of representing the Judicial Qualifications Commission. I'm one of the only Black lawyers to ever be able to do that in the state of Georgia, where I prosecuted judges who had done something wrong. And so that was a great honor of mine. Richard Hyde was one of the people that helped me to get that position, because he had worked with me on Atlanta Public Schools. I think that he's still doing that kind of work, and he's a very great investigator. So I did that for a while. I also got to represent a lot of fathers and mothers as they went through domestic things, did some criminal defense work. And then people started coming to me, you need to run for district attorney. Current district attorney has some problems. You'd be outstanding at it. And who knew? I ran, I won. I'm the first woman to serve as district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia. Best to ever do it. I sit here with a 92% conviction rate. That's my history.
Excellent. Thank you so much. For those of us on the committee, it'd be helpful to kind of get a scope of what your office structure is like and kind of the makeup of your office. So how many employees are within the Fulton County's DA's office?
A little over 300 approximately. All numbers that I give today, which should be approximations. You should not hold me to exacts.
Certainly will do so on these questions for sure. Of those employees, about how many of those are attorneys?
Half.
About 150 attorneys. How many investigators?
65.
Okay. And how many paralegals?
I don't know, about another 70 or so professionals. Some of that is VWAP, some of that is administrators, some of that is illegal assistants. I'm not going to be able to guess at these numbers.
Sure. The state pays a minimum salary for all district attorneys and assistant DAs. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Okay. Can you walk us through the pay structure?
The state pays for my office about 25 ADAs. They're woefully underpaid. The salary that the state paid is a joke right now. If you want to look at some legislation, you should look at paying DAs across this country more money, because they do not make enough money, and it is very hard for people to recruit DAs at the state pay. So for those 20 or so some lawyers that work at state pay, I do one of two things as incentives. The first thing I do is the ones that work in-house, I give them supplements that the county pays, because the pay is so low and really just an embarrassment to think that we pay public servants at that rate. Another incentive I offer to some other very seasoned ADAs that are further along in their career that are my state paid employees, I let them work 95% remotely, and all they do is indict cases for my office. The rest of the lawyers paid by the Fulton County District Attorney's Office are in fact paid by the county. But you should note here that I am a state employee. I am not a county employee. I represent the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. The Fulton County DA is really slang.
Great. So give me a range then of those ADAs, including the supplement. What's the salary range of
Probably
those ADAs?
the lowest salary of any DA that works for me is 85, and the highest might be around 200. Again, don't hold me to exacts.
Sure. Okay. You were elected in 2020. We talked about that. You had a transition process in between the election and when you were sworn in. Can you walk us through what that process looked like?
It was not a very good one. Myself and the former district attorney never had a conversation. We still have never had a conversation. But while I was still on my personal time, not yet being paid by the state of Georgia, I interviewed every attorney and investigator of the office and some of the other staff, because I wanted to decide who I was going to keep and who I was not going to keep. So I did that during that time period. I also had some committee members where I got some advice on things that needed to be priorities for the office as I took office. So I got very esteemed members of the Fulton County and the greater community to kind of advise me. I believe in diversity, so it was a diverse group. If you do studies on diversity, although some of you are against it, you will realize that the companies that do the best employ diversity. And so I employed diversity in that committee, and I've employed diversity in my staff because I represent a diverse community.
Who was a part of that committee?
I don't remember all the names, and I'm not going to guess at it.
What names do you remember?
Oh, my goodness. Lee Dupree's husband, William Dupree, was on that committee. There was another anchor, and I'm embarrassed to say that was an African-American female. I'm not sure. I want to say Mayor Franklin may have been on the committee, but I can't remember exactly. There were about 15 to 20 people. That's been some time ago now.
The interviews that you referenced with the existing staff as you were kind of determining whether they would stay, who participated in those interviews with you?
It would be different people each day. Attorney Gabe Banks was one of the attorneys that did some of the interviews. He wasn't able to do all, of course, because he had an active and thriving law practice at the time. Jeff DeSantis did some of the interviews with me. Daisha Young did some of the interviews with me. People would come in and out based on their schedules. My deputy of operations now, Dexter Bond, did some of those interviews with me. Mr. Nathan Wade had a thriving practice at the time as well. He would come in and out and do some of the interviews. I was at every interview, but other people could only commit, so much of their time. They each did as much as they could. And that should not be the total list. That's what I can recall quickly right offhand. So don't take that as that was every person. I may have missed somebody that assisted me in that, and they'll have to blame it on my head, not my heart.
Okay. Who was a part of the team that made the decisions on who you would keep and who you would go? What was the consultation process after the interview? And how many approximately, if I can ask you this question a second time, if you want to answer the first one, but I'm trying to get to how many people did you retain from the former DA's team, and then how many people were brought in that were new?
I don't remember. I might have fired 50 or 60 people, but I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
It's the AJC did an article on she fired people, to which I told Fulton County I was going to only bring the best and the brightest. So I was always confused as to why that was a surprise.
Was there a lead on your transition team?
I was the lead. I was the DA.
Okay. Was there another person that you consulted with more than the others?
No.
I believe Mr. Wade said under testimony that he was a part of over 90% of these meetings or decisions. Do you recall that being an approximate accurate statement as to his involvement?
I can't speak to any other person's testimony, so I'm not going to ever comment on someone's testimony. If he testified to such, you're going to need to show it to me. You'll have to forgive me. I don't really trust you. So I'll have to see that particular testimony.
Do you recall Mr. Wade being?
Wait just a minute. She's got a right to finish her answer. You don't have a right to cut her off.
That's incorrect, Governor. Thank you.
Sir. It is not.
I'll be completing answers, sir. So
Sure.
we should get that straight from the.
Was Mr. Wade part of, would you say, more than half of the interviews that you conducted?
Yes.
Would you say it was more than 75% of the
I'm
interviews
not going to guess
conducted?
at numbers. He was definitely more than half.
And what percentage of decisions, was the same percentage of decisions that he was a part of?
I ultimately made every decision. I take wise counsel from a group of people. So I took wise counsel from him. I took wise counsel from Deputy Bond. Ultimately, I made the decision on who stayed and who went.
Was Mr. Wade paid for this transition work?
None of them were paid. It was all volunteer work. It was wanting to make sure that the region was safe. So people volunteered their time to make sure that we had the best and the brightest representing Fulton County and that this community stayed safe. And every person who did it for free.
Thank you. Part of one of the things you did when you came into office was you formed this new anti-corruption unit. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Can you walk us through the decision process to stand that unit up, if that replaced any other units, and who was a part of that unit once it was stood up?
And I'm actually not sure we called it the anti-corruption unit when we first took over. So when I became the district attorney, Paul Howard had 101 police brutality cases, many that went back to years, maybe to 2009. People in the community were very upset. It was both unfair to the law enforcement officers and to the community that decisions were not made. And so I knew that one of the things that I was going to have to do was to make sure that every case got looked at. and was evaluated. And so I was looking for attorneys to do that. I'm not sure if that's what we called it at first, because I think we called it the Civil Rights Unit. In fact, when we first opened it, I think it was the Civil Rights Unit. At some point, I go to visit other huge district attorneys' offices that have kind of the same kind of struggles that I have as a major metro area. I went to visit the Houston District Attorney's office at that time. And in that office, they had divided cases. And I thought it was a brilliant way to do business. And so I think that's the point that I then formed a civil rights unit, which would only deal with police brutality, and an anti-corruption unit. So I think when we first started that it was called the Civil Rights Unit.
Okay, how many people are part of that unit once you got it fully operational?
Well, it depends. The county has, in my opinion, stolen people from me, so we can't do the job as effectively as needs to be done. I've had as many as, it varies. It has varied because we had an anti-corruption unit and a civil rights unit. So it's varied.
Can you give us a range?
It really depends on who you're calling the anti-corruption unit. I've probably not had more than 2 lawyers in that unit, maybe 3 at any given time, an investigator or 2, and a legal assistant. They may have been doing double duty somewhere else.
And you entered into a contract with Chris Campbell to do some taint work as a part of that unit. Is that correct?
That would be the civil rights unit.
Well, it sounds like they were somewhat interchangeable from what you just said. You said that it was called the
No,
Civil Rights Unit when it started.
The civil rights unit may have encompassed everything at first, and then it ultimately becomes police brutality cases. And so what Mr. Campbell was, when the police take a statement, I know you're not an attorney, but there's an issue called garrity. And what happens is government employees, mostly we're talking about law enforcement officers, they will make a statement to the police, but that statement won't be Mirandized. There's all kinds of legal rules around it. I can't be privy to those statements. I shouldn't have them. Sometimes I think the police almost put them in there intentionally. And so they'll be intertwined in statements and reports. And so what he was hired to do is to redact. So once that I got a file from the GBI when somebody had been shot by an officer, I never read that. That way we were never tainted. That's why we use that word, by never seeing that. And so, yes, he was hired. He had been, I believe my recollection is he had been a former law enforcement officer, and he was a lawyer. I thought he was great for that work.
And Terrence Bradley was involved in that work.
He had been a former probation officer and an attorney. That's one of the reasons that I thought that they would do outstanding at it, because they had long histories in the law enforcement community and lawyers.
Was Mr. Wade?
I have lawyers now currently doing that work.
Was Mr. Wade involved with the taint work?
No.
Mr. Wade, Bradley, and Campbell were law partners. Is that correct at the time?
Loosely is what I understand. I can't tell you about the design of, I can't tell you the design of his firm. I think more so what happened is they shared office space and cost or something, but I don't know. I shouldn't speak to that or speculate to it.
Did you place anyone in charge of the anti-corruption unit, or did everyone that worked for there report directly to you?
I mean, ultimately everyone reports directly to me, but the anti-corruption unit, so when it was a civil rights unit, yes, it had a lawyer that was over it. His name is Brian Watkins. He is a lawyer that's been practicing law longer than I. And at first he had everything until we realized there was so much volume of work, because it doesn't just do this kind of work. It's not just police brutality now, right? Now it's, police lied, or it's an elected official did something wrong, and it just became too much. Once we stood up these units and my county understood we were doing these kind of things, fortunately or unfortunately, the office started to get referrals, and so it just grew.
How many cases has this unit brought to trial approximately?
Oh, I couldn't tell you over the years, but we brought some to trial, especially these police brutality cases. I couldn't tell you exactly, so I'm not going to speculate.
Okay.
It's not as many as like my major crimes unit, but I can tell you that the anti-corruption and the civil rights unit, they cost me the most money because of the experts that are needed when you are trying a police case.
How much money would you estimate that you spend a year on that unit?
I can't, and I'm not.
You can't, you're not what, I'm sorry?
I'm not going to speculate to it. I can't estimate how much.
Okay. Is that something you could provide for the committee?
I don't know that I can. What happens is I have a professional services budget, and my top deputies of certain units. So my ED over major crimes, if he needs an expert, he can hire one. For instance, if you all want to look into legislation, look into properly funding your GBI. The GBI does not have enough scientific experts. This is not a criticism of the GBI. The scientists that are there are excellent. I want that to be noted that I said that. The scientists that are there are excellent, but they do not have enough experts. So in year one, when I become the DA, they tell me, and I have an email that proves it, we can't test all your ballistics evidence. We don't have enough. So I have to go into my budget, more than $100,000, I can tell you that. I think it's been about that annually, and hire private scientists to do that ballistics work. Now, I got the names of those scientists from the GBI, but also my deputy, Mr. Watkins, over civil rights. If he needs an expert, he knows that he can get one. If my ED over major crimes needs an expert, they can get one. My domestic violence expert, if they need a domestic violence expert, they can get one. And so it all comes out of this professional services budget that I both pay attorneys that come in and work as special prosecutors, and that I pay professional witnesses that we have to hire to do our work.
So Mr. Watkins was in charge by title, or was it more so by function that he was in charge of the unit?
I don't understand your question.
Did he have a title of director of the anti-corruption unit, or was he just a person that everyone knew would make the calls within the unit?
He was the deputy of the civil rights unit.
Okay.
He remains the deputy of the civil rights unit. At some point, the civil rights unit became civil rights and anti-corruption.
Do you use those terms interchangeably now?
I do not use them interchangeably. I have one deputy over anti-corruption and one deputy over civil rights.
Who's the current deputy over anti-corruption?
Tanya Boykin.
Who is the first one?
Sonia Allen. She is now the district attorney of Cobb County. She had a great DA from Fulton endorse her, and she won.
What was Mr. Wade's role in the anti-corruption unit?
He didn't have a role in the anti-corruption unit.
The election interference case, what unit did it fall under?
I called it the election team.
Okay.
I classify him as senior. So he was a special prosecutor. He never worked for me as an employee. What I would call him is a seasoned lawyer, 25 years, first African-American lawyer to ever serve Cobb County as a municipal court judge. What I would call him is a lawyer with a distinguished resume.
Okay. When did you begin to consider whether to bring charges in response to the 2020 presidential election in Georgia?
Don't answer that. That's a deliberative privilege. Don't answer that. I instruct you not to answer.
Is it true that part of your transition team was involved in the process of interviewing people before you entered office to lead the investigation into the 2020 presidential election?
I'd like to answer that.
Go right ahead. You only take my advice sometimes anyway. Go ahead.
That's really an ignorant question. And if you understand what the word ignorant means, it means the lack of knowledge. If you recall the facts, I was already district attorney when this all came to light. So it's factually impossible.
You were district attorney when what came to light?
When Raffensperger went on Good Morning America or whatever show he went on. I was already district attorney. So what you ask is a factual impossibility. Now, I know they've gotten black folks confused and said I was running for office, saying I was going to prosecute the president of the United States, but that's what we call a lie.
Okay. I would like
Take your
to.
advice from here on out, okay?
Yeah.
If you take a look at the screen for me, if you will. This is from Mr. Wade's deposition to members of Jim Jordan's committee. And it was asked for the search committee. You said that began when DA Willis took office on January 1, 2021. Is that correct? Yes. And there was outreach to you to be part of the search committee prior to January 1, 2021. Absolutely. When did that start? Sometime after the election, but prior to her taking office. Okay, so between the election, you're referring to November 2020 election, is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And so when you had conversations with individuals, you said on multiple occasions, you said no, and you turned down the position. Who were those conversations with? They were with the district attorney.
So I think you're confusing facts. We've already had a long conversation about, I interviewed everybody at the DA's office, and I interviewed other people to come and work at the district attorney's office. And as I told you, I did that on my free time before I became DA. But I had no way of knowing that these criminals were going to commit a crime. And that did not come to light until January of 2021, when I'm actually the DA. So it is a factual impossibility, like I already told you. I think that is misinterpreted. He's absolutely correct. We looked for talent for the district attorney's office before I became the DA. I didn't wait till the day I took office to look for talent that would represent my office. But I was unable to look for talent for a case that didn't exist before I took office. It's factually impossible. It's common sense. You don't need to be a lawyer.
I'm going to read you some additional testimony. I'll try to put it on the screen.
You can read me as much as you want, but
I will.
the
Thank you,
truth.
Madam DA. And I apologize. I did not intend to have to get into this here. What was when Mr. Wade says that there was an interview on line 13, as you'll see here, this is prior to you entering office. What were you interviewing him for?
I didn't interview him prior to him entering office. He had a thriving law practice. Even when he ends up being offered the position, he doesn't want it.
Okay, now so it's your testimony today that you and Mr. Wade did not have any conversations prior to you taking office relative to an investigation into the 2020 election.
Don't answer that. That is a deliberative privilege of what goes on in a district attorney's mind and the process that goes.
She wasn't district attorney.
She was.
Prior to being sworn in, she was district attorney?
No, she was not. But you asked.
So I'll return to my question. Prior to you being sworn in as district attorney, is it your testimony today that you did not have any conversation with Mr. Wade about investigating the 2020 election?
Do you want to answer?
It's a dumbass question.
I know it is, but go ahead and tell it because it occurred after she took office. But
I didn't know that he was going to commit a crime prior to me taking office. Like, factually, it's impossible.
Okay, thank you. Would you agree with the statement? Actually, I'll skip that question. When did you decide to hire outside of your office a special assistant district attorney for this election case?
Oh, Lord. So when I became the district attorney of Fulton County, the office was in absolute chaos. I have to take you back. Can you hear me?
It's a little, I was going to try to turn you up if you don't mind leaning forward.
When I became the district attorney of Fulton County, the office was in absolute chaos. And I mean every level of chaos. On the ground, the carpet was molded and there were holes in it, and it was disgusting, a disgusting environment. There were boxes in offices, some to where you couldn't open the door. I remember walking through the office before. I told you I'd fired 50 or 60, I don't know exactly how many employees that I felt were unqualified to do this work. That doesn't mean they were bad people, but they were unqualified for the positions that they held. There were 18,000, write that down, 18,000 unindicted cases that went back 6 or 7 years that I was looking at. Not to mention another, 10,000 indicted cases in the system. Now, some that the judges had hid on judicial hold, but they were still there. So the office was in absolute chaos. And then I'm in the office on, I came in that Saturday, so that would have been day one. That was the day that I walked through the office. And I'm literally in the office that Monday or Tuesday. I can't recall now what day it is. And there's this phone call, and the Secretary of State saying, oh, the proper venue to investigate this might be Fulton County. And so my priority became, and this is important too, there were 200 and something murders that had been sitting for years, families that had been waiting for justice for years. And so when I come to be the district attorney, my first responsibility is just getting the office properly set up. In fact, one of the most important roles I held up that I tried to find was the head of the civil rights lawyer. So when Brian Watkins walked into my office and actually interviewed to come there, because he was not with the old administration, that was like a gift from God, that I had a lawyer that had enough experience and would be talented enough and ethical enough and have the integrity to do this work. But my primary job was getting the entire office set up. So I immediately do things like set up a murder backlog project. I put Mike Carlson and Michael Sprinkle in charge of that. We're going to get every family's going to get an answer. They may not like the answer. The answer may be we can't prosecute this, but we're not going to sit with cases. We got to make decisions on these cases. And it took us years to get through that, but we did. And I'm happy to sit here and announce to you, every one of those 18,000 cases, a decision got made on, to include those 101 police cases I talked about, as well as the 46,100 and I think 36 cases that came in January 1st, 2021 till December 31st of 2024. So while people tell these lies about the DA ain't been working, I want you to find a DA working as hard as me.
My question was, when did you decide to hire outside counsel, a special assistant district attorney, for the election interference case?
When it became obvious that this case would take so much investigation to learn the truth, and that I would need people that could focus on that. And although I had talent in the office that was being developed, each and every member of my staff had a priority. See, this is the most important case to you. Let me tell you what the most important case was to me. When I walked in the office, there had been 2 Black children that had been killed, Sequoia Turner and Kennedy Maxwell. Those were the 2 most important cases to me as the DA. And I needed to make sure that those families got justice, but the cases didn't come with a bow on them. In fact, one of the cases was particularly not done properly. And so my priority became making sure I had the talent to make sure we got all of those cases done. If you're wondering, both those men are doing life right now for taking those children from us.
Certainly aware of the case and the autonomous zone and everything that happened back in that tragic time frame. So definitely appreciate those murderers being behind bars. So you didn't really give me a date range, but we'll just move on here. But you did consider Governor Barnes for this role. He's testified to that previously.
And let me tell you what Governor Barnes told me. Governor Barnes told me when he was the governor, he changed the state flag from the Confederate flag. And that as a result of him changing the Confederate flag to changing the flag to make it more inclusive to all Georgians, that the Ku Klux Klan sat outside his house and that he lived under threat during that time period. He told me that him and his beautiful wife had survived that, but that he was an older gentleman now. I'm going to say that nicely. He was an older gentleman, and due to the nuts that would come out of the woodwork if I was doing this type of work, that he was not at a juncture in his life where he could take those kind of security risks. He also refused to work for $250 an hour.
I can attest to that.
We've got some question in here, Governor, on your rates, and we'll get to that in a little bit. You did, Madam DA, you considered several attorneys for this case in addition to Mr. Barnes?
I did.
And ultimately, you selected Mr. Wade to oversee the anti-corruption unit. Is that correct?
He never oversaw the anti-corruption unit.
My apologies. To oversee the elections interference case.
To manage, yes.
How would you delineate manage versus my choice of oversee?
They're the same.
Okay. What happened between January 2021, I believe that's when the phone call was that you referenced, in November 2021, which was the time that Mr. Wade signed his first contract? What type of work happened within any area of your office in terms of gathering evidence or considering whether or not to bring these charges?
You want me to answer? Not particularly. I don't think it's any of their business.
You're getting into why a grand jury returns a bill of indictment. That is a deliberative process wrapped in the discretion of the district attorney. We're not going to get, I'm going to instruct her not to answer. Wait a minute. You can, if you see fit, you can seek to enforce that question, at which time she would be entitled to a jury trial in Fulton County, and I would be able to cross-examine you with each one of you with a real judge ruling on real law. But until that happens, I'm going to instruct her not to answer.
So on your advice of counsel, you're asserting privilege.
I'm telling her not to answer.
I'm clarifying with the
She
witness.
doesn't have to answer that. I'm not a potted plant. I can answer.
You can advise. You can absolutely advise your client, Governor Barnes. I'm asking your
I
client.
suggest you move on.
I'm asking your client if you are asserting privilege on the answer to the question.
I made the objection on the record and told you even what you can do to enforce it.
What was the total cost of the election interference case?
I don't recall, but if we want to talk about cost, I'd love to talk about how last year alone the AG paid one lawyer $8 million.
You don't know what the cost of you don't know the cost of the election interference case?
I don't know the exact cost.
What's the range?
As I don't want to speculate to numbers. Whatever it cost, they tried to steal the rights of thousands of Georgians. It couldn't have been enough.
What was the rough total operating budget of your office last year?
I don't know that. It's probably around $40 million. That's a speculation and a guess. That includes state money, grant money, and that's not an exact number. I don't do the budget. I have very high level conversations about that.
Okay. Can you give us a rough breakdown of that, the county budget and the state budget?
I cannot, and I'm not going to guess for you.
Does the federal government give you any money?
I do have some grants, yes.
The only source of federal money you get is from grants?
To my knowledge, I don't. There may be something else. We may have some federal seizure money. If we do, it's not much. So I don't know. I don't want to speculate. If I say, oh, they gave me grant money and this federal seizure money, and you find some line item someplace that I don't know, you'll swear I was trying to lie to you when the truth is I don't know the correct answer.
I'm just trying to get to, I know you run a tight ship over there. You're proud of your work. I would assume that you would have
I'm the
some
best
sort
DA in the Southeast. Why wouldn't I be proud of my work?
What's your annual budget?
I told you it's around $40 million, but I do not know an exact number.
And what's the approximate source of funds that you receive from the state versus the county?
Me, like every other district attorney in this state, do not receive enough funds. I told you that you all pay 20 to 25 ADAs. I don't know the exact number. I don't have it in front of me. You pay two legal assistants and one investigator. Now, Fulton County is 1,000,002 people. It's the place that when people come to Georgia, they're coming is to Atlanta on a daily basis. We have 5 million people, and we are very improperly funded. If this committee wants to do some real work, it'll get serious about crime fighting among this state. From every rural community to I'm answering my question.
I'm good. That's not an answer to the question.
Okay, well, if this committee wants to get serious about legislation to make the communities in the state of Georgia safer, they will invest more money in every district attorney's office across this state. That's the rural DAs need more, the middle size, the residentials, and the big cities like Atlanta. All of us need more resources to be able to do our job appropriately. And it is a joke the way that these people are funded that are dedicating their lives to public service. Also, I want to go back to, because this is extremely important and you have the power to do it. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation cannot taste rape kids.
For advice on what the legislature
you asked
do.
Exactly what the resolution said. to take advice on legislation.
And we will get to that time.
Well, you answer the question, she has a right to fully answer.
And if she would answer the question, Governor, I would not be saying it. She's pontificating on everything from rape kits, which was what she was about to get into. The question was the amount of money that came from state funds and county funds. And if she doesn't know the answer to that question, the answer is I don't know. The question isn't let me talk. The answer isn't let me talk about rape kits. So I'll get back to the line of question. I'm going to give you latitude here, Madam DA, but I same way in a courtroom, there are guardrails as to what we need to stay in and within. Indeed, Governor. And this is not a courtroom.
Power to make evidentiary rulings, and you don't have the power.
I have plenary power, Governor, to conduct the meeting.
No, sir,
Absolutely.
You do not have plenary power. I know you think you do and that you're above the law, but you are not. If you want to cite her for contempt,
Governor,
she is entitled to a jury trial, and I can examine you on your actions, and I can examine you on your motives. Then I will be glad to take that, as Clint Eastwood would say, make my day.
We know the motives. He's on the ballot.
Governor, this is
a witch hunt.
This is a hearing
Always been a witch
of the Senate Special Committee on Investigations.
You're not worried about those that you convicted illegally and locked up. Why is it that you run ads?
We're going to go on to our next question. How are the funds? You say that we give you the money, and I know that's a loose term, and that flows into the Fulton County coffers, so to speak. And when you remit payment, you do that through the Fulton County accounting system. Is that correct?
Your question was compound. I didn't understand.
Sure. I'll try to break that down. When checks are written as a result of a check request made by your office, those checks are paid by Fulton County. Is that correct?
I don't know how every check is written and if that's going to be 100% accurate. So I'm going to refrain from asking that question. What I can tell you is that, and probably happens in every other circuit, the district attorney has control over their budget and they don't have to go to the county. But I understood I was a woman DA coming into office. I also understood that I was African American. And so therefore there would always be a target on my back. And so I did two things financially. One is I've never, so people can stop requesting, had a credit card associated with that office. Never. So I've never had a credit card, will never have a credit card. The other thing I did is that there is a CFO of Fulton County, a white female. Her name is Sharon Whitmore. I believe you've heard from her. And so I made it so that the procedures of my office, although I did not have to do it, that it has to go through her for clearance. That way, nobody would say the district attorney stole any money.
Okay, that gets to the core of my question. So when you're paying vendors, when you're paying contractors, that's going through, I think you said her name was Miss Whitmore, and she did testify before the committee. What I'm getting to, and I'm trying to figure out, is whether when the state funds come in, the federal funds come in, the county funds come in, are those paid for out of separate accounts? Are those funds kind of commingled into a general budget, if you will, and that gets allocated?
I really couldn't answer the question. There's many different pots of money from the county. The state directly pays those state employees. Then they get another check from the county, the ones that don't make enough from the state. I really can't fully answer your question of all the ways. I have a team that I call my deputy. I have a deputy of operations and a team that does that kind of stuff. But there's some money from the county. There's some money from the state. The grant money I know goes through the state. The truth is I don't have any grants. Fulton County has grants, but those grants do benefit my office. My Saki unit is renowned. I'm ending the year with 100% conviction rate on Special Victims Division. Saki is a sexual assault kit initiative. Georgia, like many states, failed victims, mainly victims of color. And so rape kits for years, going back to the 80s, were not tested. So we have a grant with the federal government that, and I'm talking about thousands of rape kits, where they go and they test those rape kits. What we have found is if they would have done those jobs and believed those victims, that many of those rape kits go back to serial rapists. They also go back to people that have committed other crimes. I have excellent attorneys that are in that unit, some that I pay out of the grant, some that I add with my general fund. And as I said, not just my Saki unit, but my crimes against children unit, my Saki unit, my sexual assault unit, my human trafficking unit. We're ending the year with 100%.
So just yes or no on these, we can move quickly on to the next topic. You said you do not have a county credit card or a DA credit card.
Absolutely not. So y'all can say I stole some money.
Is there any sort of DA checking account that's separate that you use to pay your vendors or anything like that? Or is it all go through the county?
I really can't answer that. And so I'm not going to speculate.
Okay. You mentioned forfeiture funds before. Do you have a ballpark of how much you've received? I think you said it was a small number of state forfeiture funds.
No, I said federal.
Okay.
I don't think there's much in the federal forfeiture account.
Do you receive state forfeiture funds?
I do.
Approximately how much a year is that in an average year?
I don't know the number to that. I can tell you I have sitting in abeyance. I just did a huge forfeiture, but it's not money we can touch yet. And it's a couple $1 million.
Okay. What's your understanding of the allowed uses of state forfeiture funds?
Oh, if I don't know the use of a forfeiture money, I talk to lawyers in the office. I'll go to PAC. I don't touch forfeiture money unless I get some approval.
Do you know any delineation between the allotment, the allowance of uses between state forfeiture funds?
Yeah, there's definitely
and federal?
rules around. There's definitely rules.
I was asking about the difference between federal and state, if there's any rules there.
There are rules to both, and I don't know I can't tell you the rules for each. Anytime we were going to make an expenditure, we would look at it, I'm sure.
Do you know if those funds are commingled at all within your system?
I don't know, but I would believe not.
Okay. Who is it? You mentioned that you've got people. Who is it that oversees the use of forfeiture funds in the office?
It's going to be the county that stuff is going to go back to the county.
Okay. And do you know whether or not any forfeiture funds were used to pay Mr. Wade?
I'm not aware of that. We would have submitted the invoices to the county. The county would have used one of those mini line items. They would have paid them.
Can you think of a reason why forfeiture funds would be used to pay Mr. Wade?
I guess he's.
Don't ask. She just told you that she doesn't know. So
Yeah, you were asking me to speculate.
You do not know whether Mr. Wade was paid with state forfeiture funds or not?
You're asking me to speculate.
No, I'm asking if you know whether or not state forfeiture, any forfeiture funds were used.
I'm unaware of that.
Okay.
I'm unaware if the answer is yes. I'm unaware if the answer is no. What I'm aware of is the process was turn in a bill and they would do it. You and Jim Jordan working together?
I've never talked to Mr. Jordan.
he's a delightful guy.
Just
I don't know
want to
about
point
that. Anybody who doesn't report people that get raped in college, I'm gonna have to disagree
just
with you
want to
there,
point this
Governor.
out here. This is you recognize the bottom form here, Fulton County court payment voucher.
I don't.
Is this you've never seen any document in this format before?
Never.
Okay. Well, this shows a number of things here. It shows what fund it was paid from here, which is 440, which is your the forfeiture fund account. You can see at the top the unit name confiscated funds for this invoice. And then here you can see that this was a payment made, and I apologize, you can't see my mouse. On the left side there, right in the middle, you can see that this was a payment made to the law office of Nathan Wade. In reviewing for your testimony today, we just did review the bills and look through different sources of funds that were used to pay Mr. Wade. I know your testimony is you were not aware that forfeiture funds were used. We saw Mr. Wade was paid from forfeiture funds and from the county general fund, which is Fund 100. And that's why I was getting to the uses of forfeiture funds to pay independent contractors. Do you have any knowledge of any restrictions that may be around the concept of using forfeiture funds to pay independent contractors?
I do not. It was my understanding that Mr. Wade was paid out of my professional services budget.
Okay. What's the accounting process? That's kind of what I was getting to earlier. If it was your understanding he was paid out of the professional services budget, that would intimate that there's some sort of accounting procedure within either your office or the county office where there are separate fund allocations. And I asked you if your funds were commingled and everything was paid out of the same, or if there were dedicated accounts. So you were unaware that